You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 on Instagram and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in Janelle Romero, owner and managing attorney at Genesk Law, focusing on labor and employment law in New York City. Janelle, such a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Good. So we're going to get right into your story. But first, I need to give a shout out to our business partner, Lex Reception. So everybody out there, check out Lex Reception. Don't miss your calls anymore. 24/7 service, answering calls and messages in real time and appointment scheduling. Your clients will receive care and support they need with Lex Reception. Their legal answering specialists are on hand 24/7, so you'll never miss a call or a future case. Custom scripting and software that can seamlessly integrate with your current workflow. Lex will make sure that every potential client gets fantastic service from the very first call, and you're going to get, as a Lawyer Stories listener, $250 off your first month of service. So let them know that you found us, you found them through us. And Janelle, back to you. Let's move on to your story. So again, thanks for coming on. I'm just saying this right up front, like you're a TikTok superstar. So, I appreciate you doing some podcasting with us. How are things in New York City?
Things are good. The weather is getting really nice,
Yeah.
thankfully. So we're on like when that winter depression kind of starts fading out and people are smiling in the streets again. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, I'm in Mass, so I feel like it was nice. It was like 50 degrees today, but I feel like we're just going to get clobbered with like at least one more snowstorm. It might be like sometime it's going to sneak up in March or April. But anyway, all right. So enough about the weather. So let's start with like a little bit of background. So were you born and raised in Florida? Like, just give us a little bit of background about that.
Yeah, no, I was actually born in California, in San
Nice.
Diego.
Okay.
And then I lived in New York for a little bit when I was younger. And then we moved to Florida. And I grew up primarily in Florida, initially in Miami and then in Naples. And then I moved back to New York for law school in 2017.
That's
And
awesome. Yep. So at what time in your life did you know that was your path? Like you were gonna go to law school?
So I was actually pre-med in college.
Wow. Okay.
And like most lawyers, terrible at math, which was kind of my stopping point of pre-med. I went to a guidance counselor and I was trying to figure out what I could change my major to that I would still be able to get a job after college, basically. And I thought, well, maybe I'll go into law. And my guidance counselor was like, I think you're a little soft-spoken. I don't know if this is really like the right career for you. And I'm the kind of person where, good or bad, if you tell me I can't do it, I'm going to do it, even if the entire trajectory of my life.
Wow. You're gonna just risk that. You're just gonna do your whole life just to prove that person
Basically.
wrong. All right.
I mean, I figured worst case scenario, if I hate being a lawyer, there's other things I could do with the degree. And if they didn't work
Sure.
out, the worst thing I could be was a lawyer. So
Right.
I did okay. Yeah, and that's when I changed to political science and then applied to law school.
So here's like kind of a fun fact. Like you went to Florida Gulf University and you became proficient in Italian. That's amazing. Like you did like study abroad or something. Like
Yeah, I
you
did.
were
I
just
mean,
like, yeah, I'll pick up Italian. Why not have that in my back pocket?
I mean, I'm fluent in Spanish,
Okay,
so
very
it
nice.
wasn't very difficult. I spent 3 months in Rome, and I think being immersed in it. So I did instead of a study abroad, I did an internship abroad.
Mhm.
And I had a lot more free time. I definitely recommend that over studying abroad. But I think
Okay.
one thing I did that I really wanted to kind of like immerse myself was I volunteered at a soup kitchen.
Hmm.
And most of the people going to the soup kitchen didn't speak any languages other than Italian. So it was great to do, but also for me, I got to pick up Italian very quickly because I didn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
I would say that I still speak as well as I used to, but I can understand it.
Well, I mean, going back to the Spanish thing, I am the seventh grade award winner in Spanish. I won the seventh grade Spanish award. But no, I did notice that you volunteered at homeless shelters. I thought that was amazing. Personally, my full-time job, I work in public housing as an executive director. So I think like that's really great work for you to have done as like a college student. So congrats to you on, learning that sort of thing very early on. And then, so you went on to New York Law School. We've met through Lawyer Stories. We've met a lot of people. New York Law School, great school, gets great, great recommendations and great things are being said about New York Law School. You did the 2-year honor program. Like, how does that work? Do they like call on you twice as much, like to get you through? Like, I mean, that's wild. Like, do you have to take like 8 classes? Like, tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about the honors program.
So basically, in a normal year, you go through 2 semesters. I just did 3. So I started my fall semester in January. I did summer as the spring semester and then another fall semester. So I did 3 semesters a year,
Wow.
for 2 years. And then some semesters I had to take like 7 classes.
Okay.
Um,
Wow.
but but yeah, it was basically just nonstop law school for 2 years.
Did you have a reason to do that? Was that the only way you could be in an honors program there?
No, I mean, I think I just actually I didn't want to come to New York. I didn't really want to go to New York Law School. I
Okay.
should have gone to Boston. Um,
Okay.
and then I was waiting to hear back from results from other schools. And New York Law School was the first acceptance I got. And I was like, okay, great.
Mhm.
And then they followed up with me and they offered me a great scholarship and admission into their 2-year program. And at
Wow.
the time I was working for a law firm. And I asked my boss, like, I'm sure I could probably get into some schools that are ranked a little higher. What do you think? And he was like, if you can graduate faster with less debt,
Mhm.
that's what you should do.
That's smart. It's great
Uh,
advice.
it was great advice, and I'm glad I took it
Yeah.
because um, law school is amazing. I had a great time, but um, I'm glad I did it in 2 years. I got a head start on my career.
Yeah. No, that's unbelievable. So, did you have a mentor in law school? And like, how important do you think it is to have a mentor?
I didn't have a mentor,
Okay.
and that's why I think having a mentor is super important.
Mhm.
Um, I think I wouldn't say I don't have any regrets. I don't think I've made any major mistakes in my career, but I definitely think that there are things that I wish I would have known when I was in law school that I didn't have attorneys in my family.
Mhm.
So a lot of it was just kind of navigating and trying to figure things out. So I take mentorship very seriously. I try to mentor as much as I can
It's nice. Yeah.
time I have for that reason, especially with like Hispanic first generation. There's just not as many resources
Right.
available.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, sometimes when you don't have something, like you definitely want to like give it back. I was sort of the same way, like in law. I mean, I didn't have like really a mentor, like somebody to like tell me do X, Y, and Z. So I try to do that too. Like when I come across somebody on Lawyer Stories, or if I know somebody who like needs a little like help and we can provide it here, like we do that. So that's awesome to hear that that's something that you're willing to do for younger students. So tell us about your first job at a law school. You have amazing experience. And by the way, I saw one of your TikToks from like early January. Yes, I was going through a few of them today. And your LinkedIn. I have whatever, that's just what I do. But one of your TikToks from like early January was really interesting because it discussed like how you strategically went from different jobs. So I wanted to ask you about that because I think like as a young student and a young graduate, a lot of us really don't. Uh, I don't want to speak for other people, but I'd just be lucky to like get a job. You know what I mean? So the way that you went about it was really interesting, and you have a lot of good experience leading up to where you are now. So I want to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, when I first graduated, I wasn't entirely sure even if I wanted to practice law. I was just trying to figure out what to do with my degree. I applied for lots of different firms, and um, actually, the firm that I ended up working for, I was representing it like victims of wage theft, which primarily were undocumented immigrants. A lot of them worked in like construction and manual labor type of jobs. And so when I was going through the interview for the work, the person who was hiring me or doing the interviewing process was like, the only concern that I have is that our clients may not take you seriously, or they may, make you feel uncomfortable. And um I don't know why, like, at that point, I was just like, "Okay, well, I didn't get the job, so who cares what I say now?" And I
So
kind of
that was during like a job interview. They said that
Mhm.
to you. Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, "Well, if somebody doesn't respect me, but they need my help, that sounds like a they problem. Like, I guess you don't
Yeah.
need my help then. Go help
Right.
yourself." And I was like, "And if that's a concern that you have, then this isn't really a firm I would wanna be at anyway." And I kinda went on, like, this whole rant, and I think, like, I blacked out a little, and then
You
when I
blacked out. I love that.
I was
Well,
like,
I mean, just because like it's like you're just like and
I
you're
was
just
so upset, and I was like, "I didn't get the job, so who
yeah,
cares? Like,
right, right,
tell 'em
right.
what I'm thinking." And when I finished, it kinda hit me like, "Oh my god, I'm still in this job interview," and I packed up all my stuff, and I was like, "Thanks." And I
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and he was like, "Wait, do you still want the job?" And, I mean, I didn't have another job lined up, so
Yeah.
I took it, and it ended up being the best thing. Like, I loved that job. I had so much fun with it. I loved, like, going into court with 10 construction workers behind me, and we were like,
That's
"Let's
cool.
do
Yeah.
it." It was so it became, like, a thing that I was really, really proud of. Um, and then I started noticing that a lot of our clients also had pretty valid discrimination claims.
Mm,
But I couldn't do anything about it. We didn't practice discrimination. We strictly did wage and hour. And so I wanted to gain more experience in that. I started learning that there was more to employment law than just what I was doing.
mhm.
And I figured if I want to be an employment lawyer, I want to know everything I can about employment law.
All of it. Yeah.
So I went to a firm that's pretty well known in the city, on Wall Street, and they specialize only in sexual harassment and discrimination.
Mhm,
So I went there, worked there for a bit, and then I went back to my first firm and I started their discrimination department.
mhm. Wow.
And then I was doing that for a bit, which is how I got started on TikTok, actually, just like marketing and trying to bring
Yeah.
in clients. And then from there, I ended up working for an international startup. I was their head of labor law, and I was basically just helping them expand their services in other countries. And startups are it's a very different working environment. Like, you do a month's worth of work in a week. So
Wow.
I wasn't there for very long, but in the time I was there, I worked with so my job was to work with attorneys in other countries, find out their labor laws, and figure out what we had to do to establish ourselves as employers there.
Mhm.
And in like 2 months, I think I established us in like 26 different countries,
Wow.
which was cool. I got to learn a lot about international labor laws, how they compare to ours, and things like that. Um, and while I was working there, this guy reached out to me through TikTok, and he was like, "My wife is pregnant and she's going through terrible discrimination, and I really would love for you to speak to her." And I spoke to her and I was like, "I can find you a great attorney that I can refer you to. I'm not with a law firm anymore, so that's not really something that I can, necessarily help you with, but I'm happy to refer you." And for some reason, she was very adamant that she wanted me to help her. And I was like, "I don't have a firm. It's just going to be me and you." Like, "Are you
Right,
sure you
right.
wanna do this?" But we did, and we settled for a very good number.
Nice.
And I think that was my first, like, "Oh my God, I can do this."
Yeah.
Um, and that confidence boost is what after that, I decided to incorporate a firm and, like, actually start accepting clients that I was previously just referring to other people. And that's kind of how I got started to where I am now.
It's amazing. So you left the tech firm, the startup, and you just went right into your own firm. Did now I don't you don't have to speak on this, but I know I think I read in your story. We haven't featured you on Lawyer Stories yet. We're going to do that. But I did read. I went over it and I read that you had your own sort of situation in law school yourself. I know that wasn't necessarily like employment, but it might have been. And if you don't want to touch on it, that's fine too.
No,
Like,
that's
just
fine.
give me a one-liner and like let it go, and then we can move on. But
Yeah, there was a student in my school. I had a con law class with him. I didn't even really know him, but he decided that he was going to stalk me. So I had it went on for about like the second half of my whole law school experience, basically.
okay,
I had a Title IX, I think Title IX claim with the school for sexual harassment. I had to get the NYPD involved.
oh,
It was like a whole extortion thing. Um, yeah, but I think that somehow in my short lifetime, I've lived a lot of lives and I've had a lot of crazy experiences that maybe statistically probably shouldn't have or wouldn't have. But I do think that like every story, I just say, I'm going to be the coolest grandma one day. Like I'm going to have the craziest stories for
yeah,
my
yeah,
grandkids. And this is just one of them. And I think it makes me a better lawyer. I think
yeah.
that I can relate to my clients a lot more. I understand the desperation and the panic, and I'm able to handle it a lot better than I think a lot of lawyers who don't understand that.
So even though it wasn't like an employment situation, is it somewhat related why you wanted to go that route, like the employment law route? I mean, just like protecting people and that sort of thing? Or how did you get to employment?
I got to employment because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I figured
Okay.
if I did employment law, I could work at a firm, I could work for the government, I could work in house. So I could kind of try
Gotcha.
out.
All right. Gotcha. Right.
And then I found out I could represent victims of sexual harassment. And that's when I
Right.
was like, oh, amazing.
Right.
But yeah, I think I just got lucky, honestly. Like the um theme of my life is just I kind of fall into the perfect situations for me. And I
That's
think
awesome.
that's one of them.
Are there things that happen in the workplace that people like aren't realize are protected, would you say? Like certain things that are being said, or like is there some like a common example that you can give us? I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to give us something, but or like what's the most common thing that you see?
Mm, I think the most common thing that I see that kind of goes under the radar, I would say, are microaggressions.
Okay.
A lot of those. I think people have gotten a lot better at being creatively racist or sexist or homophobic.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
it's not that often that I'll get a case where my client has evidence that their employer straight up made a racist comment towards them. But it's a lot more often that they'll be the only person of color working there who's treated this way, and the only person who other people are allowed these things, but you're not. And
Hmm.
that story kind of adds up. I think a lot of people, I always say, if you feel like something is off, it probably is.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you go to work, you're there to work and they're there to provide you work. And it's a very professional relationship. And when things start to feel like it's going a little beyond that, that's when it's time to start asking some questions of people and start, you know, trying to figure out what's actually going on, because you don't really hear so much of, I mean, they happen, but you don't hear so much of these stories where you're thinking like, oh, my boss called me this derogatory term,
Right.
what I am. It's usually not that straightforward.
It's like subtle. It's like more like a little
Yeah.
more. Yeah.
Like maybe I'm the only Hispanic attorney and I wear my hair curly and you tell me not to. And you let everybody else leave early except for me. And the only attorney you're calling on the weekends is me. And when I ask for something, you're very rude and not accommodating. But when other people do, then it's perfectly fine. A lot of things like that, that people may think, oh, well, I don't have a case. There's nothing I can really do about it. So it just is what it is. And I come in like, absolutely, we can do something
Yeah.
about
Right. It's
it.
right. So like Janelle, what advice do you have for someone who thinks they have a workplace discrimination claim?
speak to an attorney. It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Oh, I do know why. The legal profession has built like this wall where unless you're very rich or very powerful, you feel like you don't have or shouldn't have access to attorneys. Or you're like afraid to speak to attorneys for some reason. Um, and it's really it's as simple as just reaching out, sending an email or a contact form on a website, booking a
Mhm.
consultation and saying, this is my problem. What do you think I should do? And there's been so many cases that I've filed that started with a consultation while the person was still working there. And because of the fact that they had that consultation, they were able to say, oh, I'm able to tell them, like, make sure you get evidence of this, make sure you're doing this in writing, make sure that if you're having a phone call, you follow up with an email. And so now the same situation happened, but now we have much better evidence and a much stronger case that we can bring just because you asked questions.
That's right. So, what would you say to somebody who's afraid of the retaliation by the employer, and they want to say something, they want to do something that's going to help them out, but they're just afraid of like the employer, being rude as a result of, or whatever they do, as a result of uh, their claim, or their questioning their what they're doing.
It's very possible and honestly likely in most cases of discrimination. If your boss doesn't care to discriminate against you, they probably don't care about the retaliation either, and they think that they're invincible. Um, I'm always very honest with my clients about that because not everybody's in a position to potentially lose their job over standing up for themselves. And it doesn't mean that they shouldn't, it just means that they need to be a little more strategic.
Mhm.
So normally, I get online and I say, complain, complain, complain. Everything that happens, send an email to HR.
Mhm.
Um, if you can't afford to lose your job and you think that that's a possibility, then you have to find other ways to document what's happening so that when you're at a point that you can leave, you found another job or whatever it is, that's when you can bring your claims. We're lucky that in New York, there's no, in New York City, there's no legal requirement to complain because they take into account that maybe it's a small business, maybe your manager's the one harassing you, who are you going to complain to, things like that. And so I always say, first look at the position you're in, because I don't want to put you in a position where you're so gung-ho about the lawsuit that you lose your job and now you're calling me every 5 minutes telling me that we need to settle your case because you don't have any money. That's not how lawsuits work. And so you need to understand what it is that you're going into. And you also need to understand that maybe there's other options. I had a consultation today with this really sweet girl who was like, I just cannot take the discrimination I'm facing at work anymore. And I don't think I'm going to last more than another month at this company.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, well, if you know you want to leave and you know, she was very emotional about the situation that
Mm.
happened. And I was like, if we have a lawsuit, if we have depositions, the other lawyer's job is going to be to ask you questions and kind of break down your story as much as they can. And that's something that you have to understand and be prepared for and know that the case could take time. It's not going to happen right away. And if this is something that you want to get done a little faster, ask them for a mutual separation. If you're going to quit anyway, say, hey, I spoke to an attorney. I
Mm.
know that I have claims. And before I take that route, I want to know, can we have a mutual separation? Can you offer me a severance agreement?
Mm.
Uh, and in that severance agreement, you get to walk away with something and they get to know that you're not going to turn around and sue them later. And you get to kind of leave them in your past because there's nothing I do that can fix the situation. With wage and
Right.
hour, I love that. Like, you were robbed of your money, I'm giving you your money back. Great, problem solved.
Right. Right.
When it comes to discrimination and sexual harassment, I cannot undo what happened. I can't make you feel like none of this ever went on and emotionally now you're better, but I can give you the means to hopefully move on and just leave it behind you. And that's really the best we can do here. I can't, reverse time.
Wow. Okay. That's great. You've got a lot of like different ways to handle this and to help the employee without making a big case out of it in some ways. So you said New York has no duty to report to, what was that,
To complain,
to complain.
like to HR or something about
Okay.
facing.
Okay. So the claim could just go forward without like the claim. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, so technically in most cases, like let's say you said there was discrimination. I'm gonna say, did the company know? Did you ever complain and like give them,
Right, right.
in the ideal scenario, you complain, they do an investigation and they fix the problem. If you don't give them the opportunity to fix that problem, it's not good for your case. It doesn't make for the strongest case, but it's not going to necessarily preclude you from having a case.
Okay. Um, does like an HR department have an allegiance to like a lower level employee? Like if a lower level employee goes to complain, can HR like tell the employee's manager? I mean, is that kind of how it works sometimes? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, they're supposed to. So if you
Okay.
say my manager is sexually harassing me,
Yep.
they're supposed to conduct an investigation, speak to your
Right.
manager, speak to whatever witnesses you say, and that's sort of where the retaliation kind of comes in.
Yes, that's
And
right.
I'm happy about that.
That's right.
Um, but I think that I hate to, there are so many good HR professionals, and then there are so many bad HR professionals.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
the company is never going to, ideally, they're there to help you, they're there to remedy these situations, but the company is never going to pay somebody to help you screw them over. Like
Right.
that's never going to work out in that way. And so people are always shocked when like they went to HR and HR kind of took the company side or tried to resolve it in a way that didn't necessarily help them, but more so made the problem go away for the company. And it's like, well, yeah, HR is there to lessen the blow for the company and create that barrier where if they can fix your problem to avoid creating a problem for the company, they will. But
Mm.
they're not there to be on your side. Even logically, it wouldn't make sense.
Right.
Why would
Right.
they hire a whole group of people to help you,
Yeah.
screw them over?
Yeah. No, I get it. All right. So tell us about Janus Law. Like you go out, you open your firm. You decided you had this case, and you're like, hey, I could do this. Like, what was it like to launch your own firm?
Really scary.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't think I ever planned on having my own firm. I was very happy being an employee.
Yeah.
And I've never owned a business. So at the same time that I was being a solo attorney for the first time, I was also learning how to run a business and marketing that business,
Hmm.
which is a lot of work. And um, I love it. Like I think it's great, but there's definitely a lot more to starting your own law firm than just taking your own cases.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's definitely like the business side of it, but you definitely seem to have hit it on the head with TikTok. I mean, have you gotten a lot of cases through TikTok, or is that a silly
I get
question?
almost all my cases through
Okay.
TikTok.
Yeah, that is a silly question. I mean, I don't think there's any silly questions actually, but yeah, because I mean, it just seems like I hope everybody who ever hears this follows you because it's tremendous. Like watching you do your thing on there, like explaining legal situations and with such confidence and like clarity, and I really enjoy it. Tell us who your clients are at Gen S. Like if somebody's looking for an attorney, what people are coming to you for help?
Everybody. I think that's the beauty of employment law. Everybody has a job. So I work with blue collar workers. I work with doctors. I work with really high level officials at companies. Um, I work with small business owners. I there's just I don't think that there is a person that employment law doesn't touch in some way, unless you've just never worked. But even then, if you've never worked, maybe you have a business and then it touches you in that way. So
Yeah.
um, I think it depends on the type of work, like wage and hour. My clients are typically a certain way.
Mm.
Discrimination, everything really. Um, when it comes to discrimination, like with filed lawsuits against fast food restaurants and hospitals. There's really no like
So it's just like anybody like who's touched by employment who has an issue, go see Janelle. So tell me, how'd you come up with the name of the firm? All right, okay.
I
Strike
think
that question and move on, or okay.
I,
So
I don't know.
okay,
Yeah.
it's cool. I like it. It works. It's good. Not that my opinion matters in that. And so, what are some basic rights that employees should be aware of?
That's a good question.
I got one.
You have a right to, I mean, obviously you have a right to your pay in the way it should be. You have a right to your overtime, your minimum wage, spread of hours, all
Yep.
those. Um, you have a right to feel comfortable at work. So the minute that you start to feel uncomfortable by someone else's actions at work, that's when you kind of have to start asking questions.
Go ahead.
Because bullying is not illegal at work. So if I just don't like you, Ben, and I'm mean to you at work, there's not much you can do about it.
That's
Uh,
right. It's not illegal. So one thing I tell actually, so I manage people basically with my job. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but not here. So one thing I tell employees who have another supervisor, and I've heard this, is like, and you tell me what you think of this. So your boss is allowed to be an asshole, but your boss is allowed to like be a jerk, but as long as they're not doing anything illegal, right? I mean, is that
yeah,
accurate? Okay.
yeah. So if I just can't stand you, I mean, there's not much you can do about it. If I can't stand you because you're a man or because you're of this religion or race or, things like that, that's when it becomes illegal. And people get that confused a lot, which I mean, it makes sense. They're just like, I'm being discriminated against. And you're like, why? And they're like, well, they're just treating me poorly. And I'm like,
Right.
why? The why is the most important part because the law is not there to hold your hand. Like the law is there to protect you for things that technically they're inherent about you, or you shouldn't be expected to have to change about yourself in order to do your job. So the law is not going to be there to make sure you have a happy time at work. It's there to make sure that you have a, I don't even know. What do
And
you?
I think people get confused, like kind of to go off what you're saying. I think people get confused like with discrimination and like what it is. Like you hear people say like they're being discriminated against, like things that are like aren't, I don't think is like true discrimination, right? Like discrimination has to like be a protected thing like under the Constitution, and it's one of like the six or seven. I think there's probably more since I was in law school. There's probably like 10 more that are protected, right? I mean, you can't just discriminate against somebody because like they're wearing like a blue shirt every day or something, right? So like, but I do think people get confused about that.
They do, because there's two parts to the definition of discrimination. You're being treated poorly or differently because of your protected characteristic,
Right.
race, and even age. Like age only applies if you're over the age of 40.
Right. Like
Um,
I've had people tell me that we're discriminating against them because they're smokers.
no.
No, right. Yes. That's yeah. I mean, it's we would think that they were, was more clear, but I really think that
But there's something to everything. So maybe they have an illness and their medicine is smoking marijuana.
right. Sure.
That's where maybe now there's disability discrimination. Because if I wasn't disabled, I
Right.
wouldn't be marijuana, you wouldn't be. So like sometimes there's creative ways that we find, but it really just comes down to that why. Why
Yeah.
are they?
Yeah. For sure. Let's talk about your TikTok again. Let's bring that up. Tell us how did you like? Okay, how long have you been on TikTok, and like how did you get involved with it?
I've been on TikTok for a while now. I started like in 2020.
Okay.
Um, the first videos I made were about, remember when Andrew Cuomo was
Yep.
they were all coming after him for sexual harassment and
Yep.
there's a
Do.
lawsuit. So I read the lawsuit and I made like 3 or 4 videos just explaining what was going on
Mhm.
in the lawsuit. And I took the perspective of I have 3 younger sisters,
Oh,
and I
wow.
love to talk to them about, I don't know, just legal stuff that's going
Sure.
on, but I'm obviously
Yep.
not going to talk to them like they're lawyers. So I talk to them like we're gossiping. And so that's what I did on TikTok. And I
Yep.
went online and I told the story of what was going on with Andrew Cuomo. Like I was just gossiping about this random guy.
Mhm.
And people really resonated with them because I think when they realize that the formality of law is just a formality and they see what the words are actually saying and what it actually means, it becomes a lot more simple and a lot more
Mhm.
accessible. And that's kind of the whole point of my TikTok is just that you can read the law and I don't know, to me, maybe because I read a lot of laws, like it seems very simple. To somebody else, they may read it and be like, this might as well be in another language. But if you
Right.
actually know what it says, it's really not that complicated. And, the law has this whole list of your protected characteristics and all this stuff. Really, they're just saying you can't be treated poorly or differently for these reasons. And when you understand it that way, now all of a sudden you feel like the law protects you as well, and you're part of that. And that's really what I do on TikTok. I just kind of break things down in a way that you don't need to be a lawyer, you don't need to be very educated. You just need to know what your rights are and let the lawyers handle all the, formalities of it.
Yeah, totally. So you started just making videos to like break it down to the, person who isn't legal educated, and then it just sort of evolved from there. It kind of took off. And do you have like a memorable video, like something that went like super viral, or like I know a lot of them have done like really well in the algorithm or whatever, but
Yeah, I made a video last year talking about the lawsuits against Lizzo, the singer.
okay.
That was probably my most viral, and I think it's because I took a little bit of a controversial position on it.
Okay, what was that? Because wait, was this about her like calling like her what
Yeah, there's a
dancer's
million
name and stuff?
allegations in that
Okay,
lawsuit.
all right,
But the one that I kept seeing that kind of got my attention was that people were saying that she was fat shaming one of her employees.
right,
I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like her whole career is built off of the opposite of that.
that's right,
So I read the lawsuit, and when I saw what the lawsuit itself was claiming happened in this whole fat shaming incident, I was like, that's not what happened. So I made a video, and some of the claims are very serious and based on what they're saying, very legitimate, fine. Some of the claims I think were put in the lawsuit as clickbait and just to kind of stir up media attention. And that's what I said in the video. I was like, I don't think she was fat shaming. Here's what the story says. Do you think she was fat shaming? Because that's not what the story sounds like. And, and then I made other videos talking about the other claims. But I think people were a little shocked
what
that
was she
as
doing if she wasn't fat shaming? Like what?
she asked the girl if she was okay.
Okay, oh, all right,
She said, "You seem less." I think the complaint said less bubbly and vivacious.
really, that's all it was?
Like, you don't seem as energetic and whatever as before. And then the claim in the complaint said that I don't know, she suffered from depression or something, and so she thought that, and when she's depressed, she gains weight, and so she thought that
Gotcha,
Liz.
all right, gotcha, that makes sense. No, it's good you read it so you can explain it to people. Got it.
And maybe that's what happened. But to make that leap from what's written in the complaint, I just think that I'm a lawyer. Like what's written there is what I want to see. And then we can go off and explore like all the different things, but I'm not going to go and attack somebody on an allegation that doesn't have substance.
Right.
And some people loved it, some people hated
But
it.
hey, it got around, right? It got you out there a little bit, and
Yeah.
it's great. So, what do you want to say? Anything else about your TikTok? No.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I'm good. I think it's
Okay.
decent.
All right. Well, it's good. Keep up the good work.
Thanks.
So what does it mean to you to be a member and a board member, excuse me, of the Dominican Bar Association?
Honestly, it's one of my proudest
Yeah,
titles. Um,
it's
I
awesome.
think that
And congratulations, by the way, on that.
thank you. Um, I I know a lot of Hispanic female attorneys. So I was shocked when I found out that statistically we're only 2% of the legal profession. Because
Wow.
to me, I was like, but I know so many. And then I realized I know so many because we all know each other because there's not.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So in joining the Dominican Bar Association, I didn't even know, like, I wish I knew that existed when I was in law school. We have law students, we have pre-law students who like get the most amazing mentorship and networking opportunities because of it. I didn't even know that was an option in law school. So um being able to be on the board of it now and helping like spearhead it, I think it's so important to me because I feel like I get to be part of bringing more of my people to my profession and
Mhm.
you know, just like anybody else, like the more of your people that are there, the more of your people get serviced. And so I feel like it's something very special to me. I'm so proud of being Dominican, and it's not something that typically would get associated with attorneys. Um, you know, it's technically like a third world country, and there's not I wouldn't say there's very many Dominican American attorneys here. So the fact that I get access to so many of them, to me, is just, it's so cool.
Dude, that's amazing. Congrats on doing that and being like a leader. Do you have any advice for anybody like young, like Dominican? I don't want to, I don't know. Any advice for like young women or like young Dominican who might want to be a lawyer or go elsewhere in their career?
Well, I mean, the Dominican Bar Association is not just, we have people from like all
Right,
kinds,
right. I read that. Right.
but I think that network, meet people. I wish that's
Yeah,
what I knew in law school. Like,
totally.
instead of shopping my resume around to 100 law firms, I could have been like some of these other kids who just called up somebody's friend and found out that they knew somebody in a law firm. And even now that I'm like, you know, a little more advanced in my career, and my friends are too, I'm always like, wow, this is crazy. Like, a law student reached out to me and was like, hey, do you think you can help me find an internship? And I reached out to a friend who was looking for an intern, and like, it was as easy as that. And I'm like, I wish I had known
Yeah,
that just by speaking to people and making them know and like me, it would have been 10 times easier than trying to convince people with a resume that I was worth hiring.
totally. Totally. And it's a great feeling being able to like connect a couple people together.
Yeah.
For me, I love doing that. And by the way, if you ever see anybody like on Lawyer Stories or whatever that you don't happen to know and like you want me to make a warm introduction, I'm like happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I love doing it. So we're actually, I do want to give a shout out to the I Will League and Milana and Kalpana for connecting us and bringing you, getting, for it's amazing to chat with you. Like we're going to be launching Lawyer Stories Connect too as well in the next few months, which I'm excited about. But thank you to the I Will League in New York City, Milana, doing a great job out there. So tell us what's next for Janelle and Gen S Law.
That's a good question. Because you actually got me in a really interesting time.
Let's hear it. No, I mean, whatever you want to
I
share.
haven't announced it yet, so might as well hear. I am going to be merging Gen Ask with a bigger firm where I will be starting their employment firm.
Wow, congratulations. That's huge.
So I'm excited.
Yeah, totally. And still in New York, Manhattan, that's where you're licensed. Yep.
And basically same thing, just with a bigger firm
That's
behind
great. Congratulations. That's great news. Thanks for breaking it here on the Lawyer Stories podcast.
it.
All right, good stuff. Janelle, is there anything else we're leaving out? Like anything you wanted to say about your practice, employment law, your TikTok platform?
Um, I mean, I would just say that I think that I've been so lucky in my career, and I've gotten so many opportunities, but I don't even like to use the word lucky because I did earn them.
Mm,
And I think that part of what got it to me, or got it for me, is that I was never afraid to look dumb and ask questions. And if there was somebody that said something and I didn't know what that thing was, I'd ask, because now I know. And I think that if more people spoke up and just wanted to know more, wanted to understand more, wanted to be heard more in that room, things would probably be a lot easier for them. I noticed
love
that.
that.
And as I started speaking up, doors started opening, especially with TikTok.
And you know
So
what? Like you say something that you might think is, first of all, there's no dumb questions, right? There's
mhm,
only dumb answers. Third, second, I mean, you say something, nobody cares.
yeah,
Like in that moment, it might be like, oh, but then nobody cares.
yeah,
Nobody's thinking about it all day, like
yeah,
how you said this, but that's great advice.
definitely. I think, like, had I just been working at a firm as an associate, I probably wouldn't even be here with you. So it's really just opening my mouth that opened doors.
Yeah, that's great. Congrats on all your success. Continue doing big things, and hopefully we'll meet up this summer in New York at an event or something.
Definitely.
If we get back there, we'll definitely stay in touch. Um, Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And stay right there. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in. Wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves. Cheers.